Alright, so but you want to start with a prayer maybe?
Yeah, we can. Many, many years, dear Heavenly Father, Thou hast blessed. Thou hast blessed our forefathers and all those who seek to do Thy will, and who had found Thee, O God, and those who seek they will find, and those who knock it will be opened to them. And so did our forefathers. They kept the traditions of our forefathers and of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And God had said, serve me, I will bless you. And truly He had blessed us. And we want to continue to search diligently in Thy living word how to please Thee, O God. And when we will serve Thee and please Thee, Thou will accept us in that kingdom of heaven. This we all pray in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
Okay. So
You wanna
yeah, I'll ask.
start the date of my father, as far as I know, was born in 1875 and died in 1950. And my mother, she was born in 1888 and died in 1943. Now my mom died a lot of heartaches. In the wartime. The war was on. A lot of sorrow and a lot of heartache. Now my dad died in the concentration camp. And in a way, he died from starvation. And it is a great story about when my dad died. I used to work on a farm, and we had sort of in the concentration camp some women. They used to wash our laundry and help us. And I went to get my laundry, and there was some women standing there, and they said, talking to themselves, and I stood a little bit further away, how can we notify Konrad Weinhardt his father is dying or died? And I heard that. And I said to them that I am Konrad. Oh, yes, your father is very weak. So I went to the concentration camp top man to ask him for a permission to go in the next town. And he was not there. So I escaped. And I jumped a train, and I came close to the town, and I got off the train, a freight train. And when I got off the train, I ran through the cornfield, and a man caught me. And the man was very, I don't want to say vicious, but very angry, and he had a machine gun. And I told him where I want to go. He did not let me go. But finally he took me to the place where my dad was, to the concentration camp. But because of my father's sister, who was married to Hungarian people, a Hungarian man, she was there. And the commandant there, the top man, was very nice. He did not, he just said that your father just passed away, and go and see your aunt, like my father's sister-in-law. And I went to see her, and she said, we just buried him. But that is past, you know, that is past. See, to come there, the settling, let's put it that way, that we get into the how they settled down in it used to be called Austria-Hungary. And from Austria-Hungary, it turned into Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia, the king, was a woman, Maria Theresia, and she had token so-called immigrants to come from Germany, and they come from Germany on floats on the river of Daniel. And on these floats, they settled down and cleared the land and worked very hard, very hard. But they survived. They all survived. But to come there to the point where my father then, my grandfather, I would say, and my father worked with my grandfather together. They had a grease factory, making grease out of all natural things, no chemical stuff in it. And and my grandfather worked in a factory where they made the grease, and everything was very old-fashioned. There was not much machinery. But to just talk about that grease factory, you know, and my grandfather watched a man who was from the Apostolic Christian Church of Nazarene, that every time when he ate, he prayed. And my grandfather realized that and started to talk to him. And the man then explained to him about Jesus Christ and salvation and so forth. And finally my grandfather said to him, can I come to that church? And he came and converted. And so did then my father converted. And the grease factory there, you know, was, just to talk about that you know how this was, they worked hard, but then the owner started to get older, as far as I know, and this used to be like a prescription of making that grease, and they had a great big tub. And the owner used to put everything in that tub, and when the workers came, they didn't know what is all in that tub. And they used to mix it on that fire underneath it and so forth, as far as I heard, you know. And then the owner said that whoever comes the closest to the prescription, what he is putting in there, he will give them the real prescription. And my grandfather then knew just about what is all in there, and he was the one who got the prescription. And they started to do my grandfather and my father used to go with horse and wagon and sell the grease to thrashing machines and to other people. And I remember that very well. My dad always said that. They told his father used to tell him, tell the people that grease is cheaper than a bearing. So it went, but then something happened in the family. My father's stepbrother, was involved in this here, and sort of what he had the prescription. And as far as I know, that he sold the prescription. And sort of what this who bought the prescription started very big, and then my father, the whole grease factory stuff sort of fell apart. And my mother, she had a share in a sugar factory. And I recall that I must have been not more than 4 or 5 years old. And I remember being in the sugar factory, and they had some brown sugar, It used to come down like an icicle, and they used to break that off and give us kids to eat. But then to come there, how my dad and mom moved from one province to another. You see, the province name, was different, but it was, I would say, about least about 500 to 600 kilometers away.
What province did they live in at first?
Yeah, my father's sister got married to a Hungarian brother in the church. And this brother-in-law found out that a huge farm from a duke, this is a lord, a Hungarian lord, sort of what he died, and the son was drinking but not water. And that this farm was for sale. And my father's brother-in-law could not afford it alone, so he thought of my father and his brother-in-law, my father. I wasn't born yet. And so they came, my dad come down and look at the farm, and the farm was for sale with everything. Everything, horses and sheep and oxes and steam engine and name it, all kinds of things. So they bought the farm. But the wonderful way was that my father and his sister and the brother-in-law, and they lived on that farm, on the same farm where I was born then there. And there were 10 children of my father's brother-in-law. His name was Fabian. And they worked together and worked the land, a lot of land, and worked a lot of with horses but when then the children got bigger, let's call it teenagers. When they become teenagers, they realize, that it's better we split. We better divide it. And there was land on one side of the road, and there was land on the other side. I would estimate, as far as I know, the same amount on one side and on the other side. And so they decided to split. And as far as I know, heard from my older sisters and brothers, there was no dispute in the splitting. And there was a lot of things there. And they split and worked the land. And as they worked the land, they were very nice. I remember them. They were very helpful. And but then we come, I was born there, and then finally, we come to the point there, as the other question is, when the war was coming on, and as the war went on, it started to get a lot of heartaches.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things, we come there to when so long as the king then there was a King Peter, and as far as I know, the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Germans, they got very good along. There was not that I knew any problems. They all worked hard, and my father used to have a lot of hired people working, Hungarian people, Czechoslovakian people, and then the Nazis declared war onto Yugoslavia. Actually, it started that way. I was going in a city to school that time. And the Nazis want to go through Yugoslavia to Romania, and from Romania to Russia, and asked the king to go through the country with no war. And the king agreed. The king said, I don't want no war with you. But then the opposition, I remember that very well, they started an uproar, and they was demonstrating, and they were calling better war than an agreement. And then the Nazis bombed the capital city, Belgrade, and not long the army come in. They went through, and was not much war going on, but then the problems started. Then great problems started, and started the dispute. And the worst thing was this, that the Germans could buy anything, but their own people could not.
Now, were the Germans doing that to try to create?
Well, they
the
tried.
Nazis, I should
They
say.
were stiff-necked. Let's put it that way. If I say the right word, they thought they owned the world, and then that started then a big. My father never bothered with the Nazis. Just to some stories. I was that time about I would say about 9 years old, and I remember going into the town hall with my dad, and there was great big letters written. The greeting is there, Heil Hitler, and that my dad did not. My dad said the greetings was in Hungarian language and in German language of public and things. God bless you. The people go on the street and said, God bless you. And my dad said to the man, God bless you. And the man got very angry and said to my father, see up there it says. And my dad just answered them, God bless you, my boy. And I thought that dad, this is, but my dad never bothered with it, to tell you some story, to me it was and I remember it very well, my father and I working in the workshop, fixing a trough. I remember that, And the neighbor came along just a few days ago and wanted to buy a cow. And said to my father, says, Frank, my cow doesn't give me any more milk. I want to buy the neighbor's cow, but he would not sell it to me because I am, I think, a Serbian. And my dad said to him, you got the money? He says, yes, I got the money. He says, okay, sit in the buggy. And they went down there and they bought the cow. But some saw that. And they called like the FBI, a very high man. We used to call them the black man, the black people, And I remember being in the workshop, holding the trough to my dad, fixing it, And these drove in with a buggy, the wagon, and come off and called very, very rough, Mr. Weinhardt. And my dad says, yes. And they said, you bought a cow? I says, yes, I bought a cow. Because my dad went and bought the cow in his name and give it to the neighbor. And they said, where is the cow? And my dad says, by the neighbor. And they started to yell at my father. My father was a very calm man. You could never get him excited. He doesn't matter what it was, and I don't want to get into that. And my father stepped up to these Gestapos and said, boys, you want to yell, you want to scream, you go to the Russian front, to the Russian battlefield, and you can yell as much as you want where my two sons are. But the two sons that were on the Russian front, as our belief is, they did not take the weapon. They were first aid men and servant and so forth. But these Gestapos must have been thinking very fast. If we do anything to this old man, and these sons come home, we be on the Russian front. So they just took off. There were so many things what caused friction. But then, it wasn't too long, then my mom died, died in 43, and then we started to realize that the war is starting to get, there was no radio. I remember we had a radio with homemade batteries, because they took all the radios away that we don't hear how the Nazis are losing the war, and then all of a sudden was there that the Russians are coming, And so it was, that the Russians were coming, and the Russians were not too bad. I don't remember anything that I remember one thing very well, where I was about 12 years old, 13 about, where they always said, "Nie boi se," don't be afraid of the Russian soldiers. But people in the country, they were very bitter. They were very bitter, and they had, I would say this, they had sort of a reason, because they mistreated them. They had, but there was some people, very nice. There was some, like, let me tell you another to me it was very important, and I knew him, that when father had sons, especially farmers, had sons in the army, they used to get a Serbian man, a young man, to work for them. but for nothing, for no money.
Like a slave.
Like a slave, but yes, like a slave. But so there comes a young man and the father of this young man. And I remember him very well. He came to my father, and said, "Here's my son. He has to work for you, but my son has tuberculosis, a lung problem, and he cannot work. I'll pay a man," said the father of that young man, "to work for you, but don't make my son to work." And my father said to him, "You don't have to pay nobody. Your son can be here." And I remember him having a lawn chair in the orchard and chasing the birds. Yes. He was very nice. A young man, but he cannot go home because they will draw him to someone else. But the father of that young man knew that our faith, we belong to the Nazarenes, and so, but to continue how wonderful this thing worked. And then when the Russians came and a lot of killing went on, this man came, and I remember it very well. This man came to the farm to make sure nobody do any harm to us. And he helped a lot. There is a lot of things I could say where we were then by the communists gathered together and went to a concentration camp, to a camp, and they brutally killed people. They were just unbelievable, But then they, just talking about that, they came then in that camp, those who are over 60 and under about 16, they go home. And there was a lot of things went on there, a lot of things, unbelievable, just I'm even hesitate now to say, but just to tell you, we are ready to go home, and they were calling men out just for fun to shoot them. And they just called out of the line where we were standing, out and about 100 feet away, and keep shooting at him. And he says, "I can shoot a man in one shot. Okay, you come on out." And I tried to step out, and he said, "No, not you, the guy behind you." And put him down there and shot him. But then we put on the train to go home. And when the town came, they used to, a freight train. When the town came, I went off the train and I started to run. And I ran, I would say at least about 25 kilometers. And I came to the farm, there was nobody there. I slept in the barn. And, there was a lot of things go on there, and we then had to go and work for the government. And finally they had gathered us in a concentration camp. And we went then into concentration camp, and there was a lot of heartaches, a lot of heartaches, And the things was, with everything as we talking, God had always blessed. God had found ways to go, to find out, and finally I went from one concentration camp to the other, and then my brother was about 60 kilometers away in another concentration camp. So I escaped.
Which brother was this?
Leslie, my brother Leslie, was in another concentration camp. And you know, just to talk about this escaping, I'm going back now at a time when everything was very well. I remember it very well, holding the bag when my father used to take a bag and put some flour in it and tie it up and put some other flour in it for cake and put some beans in it and tie it always up and put beans in it and put some ham in it. And said, when we go to the train station, there is a clerk there, a man who used to clean the train station and let the ramp go down, and you give it to him. He has about, I think, about 3 of the 4 or 5 of the 6 kids, and my father figured, as the Bible says, that we do things to those who cannot repay. He figured this man can never repay of anything. But now I'm coming back to the escaping. When I escaped and went to the train station, I knew that I cannot go in there in the waiting room where they buy the ticket. There were some people in there, they would have shot me right there. But so I was out in the warehouse there, and here comes this man. And the first thing this man asked me, he recognized me. He asked my dad where my dad is. I said my dad passed away. And his name was Misha Baci. And I said to Misha Baci, I escaped, and I can't go in there to get a ticket, you know. And he said, oh, I go and get you the ticket. He asked me where I want to go. I told him the town, and he went in there, and I want you to listen very carefully. He came back and gave me the ticket. I want to give him the money because I had some money from my cousin there, you know. And he said, no, you're okay. The top man who let the train go, you know, the chef there, him and I, we paid the ticket, you know. Can we see how God worked? How God, and I would estimate at least 5 or 8 years after. And I went on the train and watched the police and so forth, and I came to the town where my brother was. And I thought myself, well, I don't care, I'm not hiding anymore. It is the town, I just go to the concentration camp. And a guy come out of the door, and as soon as he saw me, he realized right away that I'm a German, and he got the gun out, and I told him, so no, he just took me to the concentration camp, and I tell you, he just thought that he will get a medal because he caught a guy, you know. And the jail used to be in a concentration camp by the office in the basement. And when he delivered me there, you know, they said, put him in the jail down in the basement. And I met my brother in there. I don't know anymore why he was in jail. But you know, I want to tell you something, just that you realize how we worked in the concentration camp, and especially this jail business, you know. When somebody got very weak, you know, because of food, Now German women used to cook for the guards, and they had a special kitchen, and they had good food and everything. And the jail was where the kitchen was in the same place, but down, in the basement. These ladies used to burn a hole because everything was fired by wood, and they burned a hole right by the fire thing, and they put a piece of steel over it, and there was a hole about, I would say maybe about 5 inches by 5 inches, and they used to take that plate away, and whatever they were baking, anything, or the cake or the bread, they put it down into the jail, and the guy in the jail recuperated in the jail. And I remember that. I never been there in the jail on it, because I used to work on a farm, and you always find something to eat, and then, a lot of things, But above everything, whatever we talked till now, God was always there. We didn't realize that so much. When I think on things, how things went, we didn't realize how wonderful things. Let's say there, being in that camp where my brother was, they came in, some high officials, and looked for some trade people. Whoever had a trade, whatever it was, from, and I remember the one who came there. He was a short, very big belly he had, I remember him, and he looked for him, and people stepped out. He always said, whoever had a trade, just step out. What are you? Electrician? Good. And what are you? Carpenter? Good. What are you? A mechanic? Good. What are you? Whatever it was. And my brother stepped out, my brother Leslie, where I came. He had a pair of overalls on, and it was in that part there, whoever had overalls, he looked like some kind of tradesman, And my brother stepped out as a tradesman, said, what are you? Well, he knew a little bit about electricity and hydro, says, okay, we need that, Then my brother said, now what? I came there to be with him. I don't think so. I was there 2-3 weeks. Now, then when this man came along, then he said to this man, says, look, I have a brother, and and then the man said, well, let me see your brother, and he waved to me, and I came there, and he looked at me. I was a young man, and, okay, he's okay too. I want to tell you so much, whoever will ever see it or listen to this, when they came to pick us up, I cannot express how happy we were, families. And there came a huge dump truck, a German truck, MIM they used to call them, and had a huge box on it. And they were families with wife and kids and even women and men, and we all packed up on that dump truck. And I remember going there, going through mountains, but we were happy. We were very excited to go there, and we came to a construction place. They had big wooden barracks, and we settled down there. And I remember food. They give us food, and they told us not to eat too much because we can get sick, because there was, in that concentration camp, was very bad. There was nothing there, It was very, 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 very bad. But we then worked there. We worked there, and did all kinds of stuff there, and we were. Then it started sort of it started sort of to. We noticed the guards, disappeared. We could get a permit, a piece of paper to go into the city, and we used to go to the city. And I remember my brother then went to another concentration camp to get more workers. And I remember he brought my sister, Katie, and he brought my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, Hermina. We all were happy, and I tell you one thing, we sort of, like I said, we could get a permit, to go into the city. And I remember it very, very well, on a Friday afternoon, around 5 o'clock or so, they came and told us, come to the office and you get paid. And we said, well, you must be joking, because we never get paid. We just worked and we had good food, and truly we went to the office and got paid, and well, then another problem started, and especially for me and two other young men who were born in 1929, and to go and get citizenship. See, the citizenship, you realize when the Germans came, the Nazis, when they came, they took our citizenship and tried to give us from Germany citizenship. And we had no citizenship. So they came and said, we got to go into town, into the city, and take citizenship. But the three of us, we did not want to go, because if we go, they will draw us in the army. So we hesitated. And some of these communist Gestapos or FBI, whatever you want to call them, top man, they came, And I want to tell you, I remember that when we were there in the office, and one of them very brutally said, where were you for 5 years? Well, we sort of whispered in concentration camp. No, he said, you were not in concentration camp. You were on holidays. I put you in concentration camp if you don't take in 24-hour citizenship. Get. And so we left. Now what do you want to do? And we had always some older people, I remember, some older people, just like our fathers, what do you want to do? They said, well, boys, you better go. I believe I did not have citizenship there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Here I got a draft to go to the army. So we went to the army. I remember a great big pasture field and a lot of young men, all born in 1929, and we had a pink piece of paper. And they were calling a number, and when they called the number, you had to go forward, but make the long story short, we were left all alone standing. Hey, what's the matter with you guys? Says, well, here is our number, nobody called. Well, he said, you go over here and you go over here, and I went, and thank God I went there as to be a first aid man. So they put us on a train, and this guy, we were all going, I remember that, and we came down to a big city of Zagreb. That's the second biggest city in Yugoslavia. Belgrade is the capital city, Croatia. They were very nice people, very nice city. And we come there to the army, and just to come there, we were there, and there were all kinds of people. There were some Hungarian people, and Muslims, a lot of Muslims, and Croatians, and Bosanci, Crnogorci, and all from different provinces, They came and said that everyone who know different nationality to make a group that they know what they got, because, And so everybody made a group there, and I stood all alone. Yeah, I stood there, and my captain walked up to me. He was a very serious man. Walked up to me and said to me, "And what are you?" When you say in Serbian language, Schwabe, a German. Yeah. And the captain says to me, "You are a German." I said, "Yes, I am a German." He paused a little bit and looked at me. "Was your father a German?" I said, "Yes." "Was your mother a German?" I said, "Yes." "Good. I never had one." Not that uplift German or anything, but he respected me. But I respected him even more. Because he was to me, my opinion, he was a very serious man. I can't recall him to smile. He was military, but I respected him very much. So I served the army. I went through schooling, learning how to help people to draw out wounded men and so forth. And when we graduated and finished, we became a corporal. But it was just a corporal, and then they divided us in outfits. To every outfit, every battalion or wherever was needed to have a first aid man. So I went then there. Actually, the captain wanted me to stay there to teach other people, and there's a lot of stories there I could say, and but it came that I had to go. So I went to an outfit in the same city where all guerrilla fighters were, very brutal killers. And they were all with a high ranked, very high ranked. And there was a doctor and myself. I had a nice there. I liked it. I enjoyed it very much to learn, to listen to the doctor, listen to patients. My brother, Leslie, he was at home. Not home, but he was free. He thought himself that he will go and destroy the citizenship, because you had to go destroy the citizenship and then try to make a passport to go to Germany.
Did you still have your German citizenship then?
No. I had supposed to have Yugoslavian citizenship. And so he went to that town hall where we took the citizenship to destroy my sister-in-law, Hermina Weinhardt, and my sister Kato Weinhardt, and Leslie Weinhardt, and Konrad Weinhardt. So I think it was a lady, opened the book and he found Leslie and Hermina and Kato, but there is no Konrad here. And there's no Konrad here. There's nobody by the name Konrad here. And it was not an argument, but a dispute there talking about this. A higher man come there from the town hall, from the citizen thing there. He says, what's the problem? He says, well, the lady said he wanted to destroy the citizenship for Konrad Weinhardt, and there is no Konrad here. He asked my brother, where is Konrad? And my brother says, in the military, the army. What? Without a citizenship? And you know, just that you have a little bit of tip at that time, Yugoslavia, Tito wanted to split from Russia. And there was a dispute there with this communism stuff and spies and I don't know what all. And he said, you cannot serve an army without a citizenship. And where is he? And give him the address. And I tell you, I remember that. I had a general. He was a Slovenian man, very nice man. I used to deliver medication to his house. And he knew me, and they all knew that I was German. They were nice, I have no complaints. But this general received a letter that I am not a citizen of Yugoslavia. And I had to come before him. Now I had, as I count, about 3 high men who were above me with the doctor if I done something wrong. But to go to the general was very high. It was a big thing. I just could not, I could just not win. And they came, the army police, to deliver me to the general, military. I was afraid. And when I walked into the office, the general said to the man, you can go. And he asked me, the general, how did you get into the army? And you know, not much papers, but I had this piece of paper. It was a piece of pink paper where they drafted me. And I showed him. He said to me, you know, I know that you're not a spy, but I have a letter here that you're not a citizen. I can do nothing, he said. The Communist Party, the top people, will decide what to do with you. But see, I knew them all because the doctor and I, we made every month an inspection. So they all knew me. They all used to come to the office to the doctor. And there's a long story about this to talk. He says the Communist Party will decide what to do with you, to court-martial you, and that means if they court-martial me, there is nothing less than 10 years prison. That's the minimum. Or to let you go home. But I had a identification as a first aid man to go into the city for 24 hours. But supposed to be all as a first aid man. And the general said to me, I'll give you time. I followed him what he meant. He meant if they court-martial me, the Communist Party decides to court-martial, he will let me know. And the general said, I'll give you time. Now, if you follow me, that means escape. Go. Nothing worse can happen. If they catch me, you'll be court-martialed and what all, or you escape the border and go. But thank God again, I will tell you, I had a man who was in this Communist Party but he liked sort of the Germans. He used to tell me even before what they were discussing there, and I was not too much interested. But he came the same evening when they had the decision that they decided to let me go. So they came, and it was a big release, but they tried everything. They tried to give me citizenship, and they even tried me to step into the Communist Party. But I said to the one, was a major, and I said to a major, we talked about what I went all through. I like to have some freedom. I'll think it over. I'm still thinking it over. So they let me go, but no home. No home. If I wouldn't have had my cousins, who were their mother was my father's sister, and we were very close. We bought the farm together as we talked. They took me in, and they were nice to me, and all that. But the thing was, I went then, and I'm trying to think where I went, but I was no citizen. I used to get a identification card book, like a passport, and the identification card was for the rest of the people red, and mine was dark brown. And on the card said, a strange citizen. When I went into the train, they always asked for identification. When I showed them that thing, they read there, strange citizen, they just looked at me, They just thought, who is this guy, And then we kept getting into really there, I was by my cousins, and not too bad, and everything, but just to see how God worked again. I had I was still considered as my father, the big farm and a vineyard, and all that, and even as I was poor as a church mouse. I wouldn't have my cousins there, I would have had to sleep on the train station on the bench. But not so bad, I lived by the doctor sometimes, the doctor's wife was my first cousin, who we grew up together. And the doctor was invited to a wedding, to a Hungarian wedding. And as the Hungarian people, they have a big wedding, a lot of cake and drinks and wine and whiskey and what all, But see, the wedding was at the place where our church used to be. And this whole little village, little village was all owned by members. And you used to walk through a member's yard, and there were Kittelbergers and Opmans and Mora and Lechels and Aders, and they were all members from our church. And the agreement was there, as far as I know, that nobody could sell their place except to a member, and this become all government. This become all. There was the wedding. So, as I recall, by Kittelbergers, they had a huge room, and there was the wedding and drinking and what all, but I did not bother with that too much. So now they said, we are going to the dance. And as we walked to the dance hall was the church, where I used to sit on my mother's lap. This was the church, the dance hall. And God had called loud and clear. Just to make a long story short, I did not stay to the end of all that. I went home. And I remember when I came back to the doctor's place, this one was a Saturday. I think on Monday I go to Belgrade to make papers to go to Germany. And there, my cousin there, she was sort of already figured out what girl I will marry and so forth. That used to be the old-fashioned way. But no, I said, I'm going to Belgrade and I make papers and I'll go to Germany. So Monday I went to Belgrade and they thought, well, go. People had to make papers, applications, and name it for years. For years they used to. And sometimes they even found someone where they made the passport, they paid underneath the table, and so forth. But to make a long story short, I went to. They wanted me to throw me out where they made the passport there. They wanted me to, and I just said, and I went to the inner minister who works inside, the top man. You cannot go there. He said, yes, I can. I said, if I want to go and talk to the president, Marshal Tito, I can go and talk to him. Do you understand that? I said to the man, you make an appointment and I want to talk to this minister. So finally he had no way to get out. I did not let go. In the same day, and I got into there and I told him, says he, look, I'm not a citizen of this country. I want to leave the country. And what I want to do, he says, I don't know. And I said to him, says, look, you're the minister. You're the top man, See, the thing was this, you got to realize that when I went to the passport people, I told them the minister sent me here. See? If you follow me, good. And this guy by the passport thing there just want to get rid of me. I said, no, you call the minister. You got his phone number. You call him and tell him. And finally this guy even got scared because of the minister, and then he says to me, well, where do you want to go? I said, to Germany. And I tell you, he filled out the papers, had to give a picture and so forth, and he said to me the same day, but I don't miss this. Before all that I went there, I went to the German embassy. And in the German embassy, I met some brothers and an elder brother, Uppmann and Kittelberger. Oh, Konrad, where are you? What are you doing? And all that. And they said, well, look, here is a book. Write your name in it, and when the office girl comes out, she will ask you what you want. I had a piece of paper sent by my brother that Germany will accept me. So when she came out, I said to her, I have this piece of paper here. Oh, she said, this is good. But you have to have a Yugoslavian passport. And don't bother us anymore. Don't come here anymore. Don't ask any more questions. We cannot do anything till you have a Yugoslavian passport. So then I went there with a passport as we talked before. And 3 o'clock afternoon about, this man come out with a handful of passports. There was in the waiting room more people, and called the names. And I tell you, I remember him, and I said, I hope mine is in there. And finally he called by name. I still have the passport. And I got the passport. I rushed up to the German embassy. And these brothers were still sitting there. And they said, Konrad, if that lady comes out and finds your name in that book, she'll get mad. And I didn't say nothing. I just put my name in the book. She come out. And when she came there and found my name, and she called, Mr. Weinhardt, did I not tell you, da, 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 da. I hand her over the passport. Oh, she said, good, good, just come on with me. I went in there, and I remember the ambassador, the German ambassador, was quite a big man. He handed him this. Oh, yeah, he just put the stamps all on and said to me, you go to the Austrian embassy. No problem at all. Austria just had to let me with the train go through and into Germany. When I came out, these two brothers, they just keep asking, what did you do? Where did you got that? Who did you pay? You know us? And I said, I didn't pay anybody. God was there. To me, even today, when I talk about that, I realize how God had there. I had money in my pocket. At 10 o'clock at evening goes a train from Belgrade to Stuttgart. That Stuttgart is Germany, Belgrade is Yugoslavia. I could have sat into the train and say goodbye. No, I went back home to the doctor. I remember it was evenings, that's supper time, I think, something like that. And the drugstore man was there. Sometimes he come to visit the doctor. Nah, they said to me in a way, sort of a, not laughing, but what did they told you there, in Belgrade? I showed them the passport. The drugstore man got it. He was sitting on the end of the table. He said, this boy got a passport. And the doctor said, let me see that. And the doctor took the thing, and the doctor said, where did you got that from? I said, from Belgrade. So there it was, and there is another story. I mean, my brother used to send me some stuff, and I used to sell it and had money. But the money was not good in Germany. But what was good, to buy feathers from geese for pillows, and not to get into this much. In Germany, all the feathers were gathered because feathers were, from feathers they made gunpowder in the olden days. And so I said to the doctor that I want to buy some feathers, and the doctor had, how should I say, people used to respect the doctor very much. And the doctor told people that he wants to buy feathers, and they used to bring the finest feathers, so I went with my cousin there, and I had a piece of paper. I don't know where I got that from, that I had a permit to take 2 pillows and 2 cover things along. And I tell you, I had 2 men had to pick up the cover. One man couldn't pick it up. I could not tell you anymore in kilos. If I don't think so. It was 200 kilo altogether. I don't know anymore then. But anyway, I came to the train station, and there was the custom man. I remember an older man. I showed him the paper, and I had the pillows, and this on a wagon. And this custom man was an older man, very nice man. And he hit the pillow. It was just like a, he said, that's a pillow. And the pillow was cute. I whispered to him, how much money you want that this goes to Germany. I couldn't tell you anymore, but I had money. I doubled it. And I remember we used to go. I used to go in a train. It was first class, and that whole train was unhooked. We didn't have to get out. We were unhooked and hooked on to go into Germany. But the freight train, I used to watch that my pillows, they put them out and put them in the thing. So the things arrived in Germany. I arrived. I tell you, I don't really remember much concerned about the pillows and the feathers. I arrived and then went to, and then there was my brother Danny, my brother John, and they all got the feathers there. And finally, my brother-in-law Fritz Zimmerman said, "Hey, you people, these feathers belong to Konrad. We all just take feathers and make pillows, you know. We got to sell them." And so he tried to sell the feathers to people and sold them very good. I remember him, my brother-in-law, brother Fritz Zimmerman, when he came with an envelope with money. And I recall I hear his voice yet. He says, "You know, Konrad, I don't think so in your life you will have so much cash money for the feathers." So it was true. It was a lot of cash money. I went and I bought a motorcycle. And I enjoyed the motorcycle. But then to come there, you know, how nice it was. I enjoyed the motorcycle. I went to church, you know, and left everything. This is what God really wanted. Just left the friends and left everything there, as they call it, the world, and went to church. And I met a lot of people. I met some people. I worked in a factory, and to make a long story short there, they worked with some aluminum, and when you washed the aluminum, I had to some dissolving stuff, some alcohol or what it was. I broke out in a rash, and I had to go to the hospital, but the wonderful thing was, you know, there was a nurse, a registered nurse, and she met me in the hallway. And she said to me, "I know you." And I said to her, "I know you. But where do I know you?" We couldn't figure it out. Finally, we found out in the church. Very nice, very nice. She was older than me, nice. But the story to come there, you know, how God had led it, wonderful, nice. We went to visit to Switzerland and name it, but I remember it very, very well, you know, that God always said, "I will." And as I had become an elder, I had heard a lot of souls who said, "I will, I will." Not now, tomorrow, not now, not now. This I will, we know even King Agrippa said, "Almost thou hast persuaded me." But it came a time where the church, in the basement down was a cafeteria and a hallway, and there was some rooms, and a lot of elders from Switzerland used to come. And maybe some would know Rügers, you know, Brother Max Hertig he used to be in Florida. His wife was a Hertig, but there were two brothers, elder brothers, and one of them I met in that hallway. And I tell you, I remember it so well when God said, "Now." And as he approached me, all I whispered to him, I said, "I want to talk to you." And he was very willing, even as I, as elder, when souls want to talk to me, I rejoiced. And we went into a room and we counseled together. And it was very nice. It was just unbelievable. I remember one thing that I said to him as the one who traveled on the road, and I said, what does it hinder is warrior to be baptized? I remember that what I told him. And he said to him, do you believe? I said, yes. So we went up into the church. We went together up into the church. And he went out on the pulpit. Actually, no, he was sitting in the bench yet, not out on the pulpit. He started the church with 220. And people wondered, what is this? Starting the church, free grace, And we sang that. I remember that. And as the song was sang, he got up on the pulpit and announced. Yeah. That's how God leaded them. And there is many other things. All I can say is God, from my mother's womb into my mother's arm, He was always there. There was no way to say that. And I often thought on it, who was it if it wasn't God? Why did this all happen? And whoever will listen to it, great-grandchildren, on and on and on, think on it. God is calling. Don't refuse Him, because He'll keep calling. But you know what? We can read there in one place that God will stop calling. You rebelled Him. You ignored Him. You avoided Him. But when trouble comes like a whirlwind, and we can hear a lot of whirlwind, people call on God. And it says, God says, I don't hear you. Call up